Hi, welcome to my new video. Linux is worth your time and it's worth putting in the effort in learning a different operating system. And in this video I want to further elaborate why this is the case. Let's go. Now, switching to a different operating system can be a daunting process, especially if you have heard, Linux is this super duper complicated system. You need 1,000 terminal commands to install a browser, for example, etc. And there is this very mysticism around Linux, which scares off many former Windows users. Or still new Windows users when they've not switched away, but yeah. Who cares? And there are many different factors at play here. For example, are you running a server, for example, and want the highest amount of data security? Do you want to create a desktop PC with the highest performance, the highest FPS possible? Get the most out of your hardware. These are all different factors at play here. So, yeah. Now we are coming to the first real point of this video. You have full control over your system. What does that exactly mean? Copilot. I just throw in this keyword. I hope there are thousands of associations right now popping up in your head. What I'm trying to say is you install, let me rephrase. The only things installed on your system are the tools you want to have installed on your system. No one can force you to install or force down, Copilot on your system without you wanting to. I mean, Copilot, messing up your space usage, 50 gigabytes, etc. I don't know, I don't care, I don't use Windows. Especially if you're working with, really important security data and you do not want this information to get leaked. And I mean, you've definitely heard about how easy it was to get for this Copilot data to get hacked, but this is a different topic. Now, let me give you an example here, on Arch Linux, for example. I'm not trying to confuse you, I'm just conveying a concept to you. It sounds way more dramatic than it actually is. If you, for example, install an Arch Linux, it has a minimal installation. There's nothing pre-installed here. And you want to install a desktop interface, you need to install it first. And what's the advantage of this? You know exactly every single package installed on your system. And you can also install only those you want to have installed, which thereby means there's less background programs slowing down your process, your performance, your latency, whatever it is that you want. Because Windows is failing its best at trying to be an all-rounder operating system. Now, but most of you will install, a different distro, Fedora, or, Debian-based, whatever. ZorinOS, for example, is amazing for beginners. If you're new, completely overwhelmed with all the 1,000 distros, use ZorinOS. Description, you can find it. But, yeah, this is a different topic. In the description, you can also find a tutorial video about ZorinOS. So, I'm well prepared here. Now, yeah. So, of course, you have full control of your system. No one can force packages on your system. Referring to telemetry, etc., Copilot. There's no invasive. The ability to fully customize your Linux PC. What does that mean? Let me give you an example. You have Alfred and George, but one of them is, says, I want to have a PC which is primarily optimized for gaming, for highest performance, lowest amount of latency. And I also want to do some music production, for example. And I want to be absolutely sure that the hardware I'm using is optimized and used primarily for these purposes. This person, for example, might use an Arch Linux distro. Or maybe not, I'm oversimplifying here. Arch Linux minimal installation. And he installs only the bare minimum packages he needs to be able to access gaming, music production, etc. Which means there's no Copilot like in Windows slowing down his latency. or increasing his latency, slowing down his performance, etc. And with this minimal installation, there is barely any processes holding him back. So his hardware can be fully optimized for only that purpose. He might even be able to install the Zen kernel. What is the Zen kernel? It's a different topic. You can optimize your PC on a kernel level, not just on a system level. But this is a different topic for a different video. I'm just saying you can optimize and customize your PC on a far deeper and far more detailed level than you can ever dream to be as a Windows user. But let's continue. And so here's the highest amount of performance. Here's a computer, a PC, fully optimized for that purpose. The other person says, I want to create a server and I want to have the highest amount of security, the highest amount of data and program and app stability. I do not care about performance. He might, for example, install a Debian-based system, or Ubuntu. Ubuntu is Debian-based, different topic. And he might have, some success with that. But then there's also this topic. He can even install the hardened kernel. What this is unimportant. I'm just telling you that there is this possibility to optimize your computer on that level. And you don't need to know how to do this yet. I'm just giving you an example. He installs the hardened kernel, optimizing his kernel for the highest amount of security, stability, but this is a different topic. So both of them can install different distros optimized for different purposes, and even that different distros they're using, they can optimize themselves even further. But yeah, let's move on. Now, Linux is open source. I know this is an obvious fact I'm kinda mentioning in every video now, which is kind of plainly obvious, but what does that mean? You're exposed to open source software, obviously. Now, if you install a Discover App Store, for example, or a software center, whatever, you are already having a list of many open source software. Many of them create alternatives or even better functioning or even worse, depending. I'm oversimplifying here to, proprietary software you may have used earlier, previously, before you have made the jump. And the only reason why you use the proprietary software because you have never really heard about the open source software. And it really forces you to go into a different mind space of experiment around open source software, trying to fiddle around with it. What kind of use case can I get out of it? Does this open source software cover all the needs I have? Even with proprietary software, you're not completely lost on Linux. Depending on what kind of proprietary software you are working with, things might get complicated or they might still be easy. That depends on the proprietary software. DaVinci Resolve, for example, being a rather hot topic on Linux. On Linux, you can customize your PC on many different levels. Because earlier I've said, you can install different kernels, different optimizations, change the swappiness. I'm throwing around lots of terms around here you have never heard. Don't worry, I will cover them in future videos, or you can look them up. I'm just, throwing them at you. You don't need to understand them. It's not really demanded of you, even as a Linux user. Because if you install a Linux distro, with the exception of Arch Linux, for example, if you have the minimal installation or NixOS minimal installation, but this is also beside the point, you install two different things in most cases. Two different things working together, but existing independently of each other. One of them is the OS, and the other is the DE. The OS, the operating system, it's the plain obvious, Fedora, Debian, NixOS, Arch Linux, or derivatives of them, Ubuntu, EndeavorsOS, CentOS, but this is beside the point. But you also install, independently of the operating system, a DE, a desktop. This is the graphical interface, the graphical mask, the shiny objects to press on or to flash across your screen. These are the desktops. For example, if you are a former Windows user, the desktop Plasma KDE is would be my first recommendation. I will cover the different desktops in a different video, but what I can say is, if you have chosen your operating system of choice, you're not limited to one desktop. You can install multiple and switch between these two every week if you want. And so can also install multiple in parallel of each other. Now, the next point is protection against malware. This is a topic I really want to be especially careful about for multiple reasons. Now, Linux is growing immensely in the market share, but still relatively small. Which means there's less hardware and malware produced specifically to target Linux users, which gives you an advantage right now. Because, as I said previously, the market share is rising. The amount of Linux users is growing drastically. Which means the likelihood that some malicious party will start targeting Linux system will also increase. So some centralized anti-malware systems really should be introduced, but this is a topic for the future. I'm just saying, you have a far greater data security advantage than towards Windows. Not just because, Linux systems are less targeted right now. Linux systems are open source. Everyone can contribute to them. And everyone can, see for holes, etc. Which gives you another security advantage. Then they have Flatpaks. To explain Flatpaks in this video would, completely explode the length of this video. In the description you can find a video. Flatpaks are an amazing environment programs to work with on a Linux system because they introduce some universality of programs on the different Linux distros. What the hell does that mean? Watch this video. As I've mentioned earlier in my really stupid example, there's a Linux distro for each use case. Of course, if you're a beginner, I would recommend use ZorinOS or Linux Mint. These two, I would recommend ZorinOS over Linux Mint. Me personally, I've never really worked with them, either of them, because I've switched rather quickly, but I'm getting lost here. But as I said previously, there are different use cases. There's Arch Linux, which is rolling release. I'm throwing even more terms at you now. I know you're traumatized enough, but what I'm trying to say is, each Linux distro is optimized for a specific kind of use case and for a specific kind of user. I will explain that in a later video, but what I'm trying to say is, are you the type of user who wants the newest software immediately? Then a rolling release like Arch might be of advantage for you. Do you want to have the highest amount of stability? A Debian system would be better for you. But I'm getting lost in this video. I will make a video about it in the future. A really big community, and also a really passionate community, for better and for worse. Now, if you are struggling with an error, a problem, some questions you might have, the likelihood is that someone else also had these questions earlier, solved them, or it was solved for them. And you can check in many different forums, Reddit, etc. and find good solutions for them. Now, each Linux distro usually has its own wiki page, which is also a good reference for you to use. For Arch Linux, the Arch wiki, for NixOS, the NixOS wiki, and whatever the different wikis are for Ubuntu, etc. Really big hardware support. Now, if you are working with different kind of laptops, the likelihood that your Linux distro works flawlessly on a laptop, PC, whatever, whichever one it is rather high. Because, as I said previously, everyone can contribute to Linux. And so blind spots of Linux can be covered really quickly. I'm currently, having a playlist about audio production. And so hardware support is of immense importance. Because, working with a laptop with, USB sticks, etc. is not really problematic. But if you're working with, external hardware, which is not really as common as other hardware might be for Linux, things might get more interesting. With an audio interface, good and fine. But if you are working with specific kind of less known hardware, things might get tricky. In the comment section maybe, has any one of you really stumbled across some hardware problems, incompatibility wise? Put it in the description. But again, the Linux community is growing, and thereby more people contribute to Linux. And so these problems can be resolved way more quickly. But this is a topic that really deserves its own video. I'm just brutally oversimplifying here.